CoffeeZilla. I watched her 3-part series called Investigating Logan Paul's Biggest Scam, and
Today I'm just going to break down Logan Paul's response on the CoffeeZilla accusations, because I think it's pretty funny just to break down all the flaws in his arguments and where he fucks up, and why it was a horrible response.
Many on this platform, you have successfully used my name for views and money.
Yes, Logan Paul, I am using your name for views and money, but it's only because you fucked up. The only reason CoffeeZilla made a video on you was because you did something controversial. He reports stuff. What do you expect? He's going to report a fucking scam. To use this as a method to say that your opponent's not doing this in the best of faith is invalid. He investigated this whole thing for over a year, and putting this forward has no reason to invalidate whatever CoffeeZilla has said. Regardless of someone's intentions going into it, that doesn't deny or prove why someone is right or wrong in the scenario. It just shows their intentions getting into it. Now, you could say they have an agenda, right? But that doesn't necessarily validate your argument. You have to prove they have an agenda, and you have to prove what they've said is also wrong. Ultimately, this argument's usually used to discredit the opposing view.
Work used to be impartial. Your addiction to clicks has clouded your judgment, and you've made very real errors with very real repercussions. Coffee, you took a shot at my reputation. So in this video today, I'm going to be defending myself with facts, something that you have gotten in the habit of twisting.
This is a very common thing, but when someone can't actually present facts or evidence, what they'll do is they'll attack the opposing character and say their arguments from bad faith. So what Logan Paul is doing is he's leading down the road to say that CoffeeZilla only cares about money and views, therefore he's setting up Logan Paul in a negative light. Though Logan Paul currently hasn't presented any evidence, we'll look for any evidence or any reason he has to validate these claims.
As you continue to morph from an investigator to a gossip channel. You see, CoffeeZilla tried to work with law enforcement in the past, but his work was described as not anchored to truth and often speculative. He is a lopsided journalist with an agenda, and he's nothing more than the Keemstar of crypto and finance. But as opposed to just telling you, I'm going to show you some of the core discrepancies that I caught in Coffee's.
Again, he keeps reiterating the argument of bad faith.
Investigation. Coffee, you interviewed the developer who stole the game code, fled to Switzerland, and held it hostage for $1 million. Well, his name is Zach Kelling. Surely, as the internet detective that you proclaim to be, you would know that he spent time in prison for multiple felonies, one for aggravated robbery, armed robbery at a liquor store, and the other for, surprise, obstructing the legal process. I can see why you kept him anonymous.
Who we'll be calling Z here.
I guess among many things, it doesn't surprise me that he lied about having 30 engineers and a $50,000 a week burn rate.
On my end, I have 30 engineers. I'm burning $50,000 a week.
Which, side note, is how this delusionist landed on the $1 million code ransom, but it turns out he only had 3.
The first argument of Logan Paul is that interviewing someone who has a previous felony or previous crime makes everything they say invalid. That's his first form of defense. He's putting evidence against the person as an insult to their character, not necessarily evidence, to set up whatever he's presenting after that. He's using this to also void accountability. Why? Because Logan Paul is the one who employed these people. Now, first of all, we've got to understand why he held the code hostage. First of all, Logan Paul never paid him. Now, from what I've heard, this is true. The second accusation Logan Paul makes is that there weren't 30 people on the team. There were 4 total. Now, I cannot verify this, but it doesn't change the fact that Logan Paul still employed these people and still agreed to pay them, which he never did. Therefore, the code still held hostage. So he's voiding accountability in that aspect. Also, he was never paid the initial settlement in the first place, so how can he employ or even get other people to work on the investment? Second of all, Logan Paul investigates his criminal background, yet he's still the one who employed him and is the one who took on the risk versus reward. This is why we have employment contracts, university degrees, and stuff to vet people out whether they're good for the job or not. Regardless of all this, Logan Paul still scammed him out of money, even though he did do work. I don't know the extra details behind this. But from my knowledge, the person who first violated agreements between both parties was Logan Paul. So Logan Paul would be in fault for that. Logan Paul also had a chance to vet this information through CoffeeZilla, as CoffeeZilla offered to talk about this specific project. Of course, CoffeeZilla went through his manager, which is the logical form or decision, to get to Logan, which was firmly denied. This means that he offered no rebuttal in the first place, and he has to vet everyone else. So regardless of what Logan Paul says, he never actually went through the vetting process of whether this information is true or not, and never had his opportunity to speak because he decided he did not want to do it in the first place. There's also facts that verify the information that people were never paid in the first place, making Logan Paul obviously the one in the wrong in this scenario. Even from his own argument's logic, what he said doesn't make sense because he's still the one who employed a person, and then he puts the blame on that person because he's a criminal, yet he's the one who employed him, obviously, and
wouldn't someone with journalistic integrity know their credible source had not only an agenda, but a fondness for orange jumpsuits? Or did you just hear what you wanted to hear and moved on? Because even if you're lying to yourself, Steven, you still have to believe it. And I know what you're thinking. What type of idiot would work with an unsavory individual like Zach Kelling? I guess that's what I get for trusting the team that I relied on to vet and manage Eddie's hiring process, who has turned out to be a professional con man that I have since learned fooled billionaires, the Mormon Church, the owner of the New York Yankees, and now me.
Now he's jumping around accountability because he fell for something, or saying he fell for something. Now, he knew that this happened. He knew he had information, and it's obvious that he does have the information that he was a criminal prior beforehand. Regardless of what he says, he still never paid the employees ever, even after several months of work. And then he goes on to void accountability by blaming it on Eddie Ibanez being able to fool other people. Just because someone fooled other people doesn't justify you being a fool yourself. You should have gone through the proper vetting process and obviously known things were shady from the start. It's still partially your fault, and a big part of it is your fault. Now, you could take the one of two bigger evils here, but it still doesn't deny the fact that you were in the wrong in a lot of these circumstances. Just because someone's worse than you does not mean you were in the right. You still had the ability to go through delaying processes, going through the process of fixing these kinds of things prior to release, yet none of that happened and you still released a faulty product. So I don't get why you're saying, oh, he did this, he did that. You still allowed it to be released in the first place. Why did that happen? You know, you can say investors, but you already screwed over the investors when you did release it. And we all know quite a few of these issues started with you not paying your employees. Now, if you did pay the employees, you would have a better argument at hand. But it still doesn't deny the fact that your lack of judgment has still failed a lot of people in this circumstance. Whether it be investors, people who believed in you, you still haven't gone through the proper processes to understand how impactful something like this could be to a person. And how many lies that you brought up, like a super fun game, yet you still haven't released the game. Or these lies and promises that you promised on your podcast weren't validly delivered. So regardless, let's say everything, like you did pay your employees, you're still making lies about something that wasn't going to be released properly. The biggest problem that I have, or problem that I noticed people complaining about, was the issue that you lied to them and you still continue to lie to them and you still continue to void accountability for some of the wrongs that you presented due to your own inadequacies.
Surely you knew Emilio, the gentleman who supposedly let his child invest in a cryptocurrency, was allegedly responsible for 2 rug pulls before you interviewed him. So either you missed that or you knew it and failed to let the public know. Why? Because it was a clear sign that he was also untrustworthy. You seemed pretty excited when the guy told you that he couldn't hatch the eggs.
Wait, you can't even hatch?
No, I'm telling you, it's just a picture.
You're kidding! You can't hatch?
You're kidding. You can't hatch?
You can't hatch?
Yeah, 1 second of research would prove that to be false, as you can definitely hatch eggs and even breed your animals.
Click on that. Oh, we got a duck.
And as you pointed out in your fine print, cross-hatching was available on ETH at one point, but you perpetuated.
There was one point in a podcast that I remember that Logan Paul admits that it doesn't work, and it only worked for a few hours until the whole thing shut down. Now, it's still buggy, it still barely works. How can you say, oh, well, he's perpetuating a lie, when he's just presenting what a person said because it didn't work for that person? Now, if it doesn't work for 90% of people, how can you still call it a working product? And he does say it does work, but guess what? It also got shut down soon after. The main reason things dropped off was because it didn't work for an extended period of time, and it still doesn't work properly. How can you make the assertion that it does work, right, and hatching works, when we know that it's been proven to be buggy for an extended period of time and it barely works, right? And it might have worked 1 or 2 times for 1 or 2 people. That barely counts. It's still a failed product and it's still screwed over investors because it barely works, right? The point is still valid that you don't have, a functioning product. CoffeeZilla even mentions this. He mentions a lot of things like how you didn't pull out and how you didn't money grub everything. I think he painted you in about as a favorable light as possible. And he gave multiple opinions, but he didn't necessarily say they were right or wrong. He just gave his investigation after those opinions were made. So he's obviously said that hatching did work for a period of time. It was just his experience talking to an investor that you should have tried to please by a properly working product, which didn't properly work 90% of the time. Regardless of all that, you still screwed over investors by making a faulty product. That's the key point at hand. You also lied about that product and even admitted the product doesn't even work. In multiple occasions, right? And saying that we're working to get things working, guess what? It still doesn't work properly.
Basically, nothing worked.
And by the way, Guy, almost all NFTs are just pictures.
I'm telling you, it's just a picture.
And surely a real internet detective would not break criminal and civil laws in trying to get information, right? So why have you allowed the illegal recording of Jeff's phone call without his permission? And then more like an internet criminal, post it online.
And it was interesting. It was like, this is wild.
Now, although you didn't verify, and
You don't have to verify backgrounds to validate information on a case. This is just a faulty argument by Logan Paul. He didn't even verify backgrounds, for fuck's sake. If you're talking about verifying backgrounds for something like university or whether the person has a job, it makes more sense when it pertains to facts about a specific study, but it doesn't make sense in the case of an event that occurred that somebody experienced. Also, the manager, Jeff, knew that he was being recorded, knew all this, yet he still continues talking on the phone. Like, what the fuck is that? You can easily get out of the situation by saying, I'm not talking anymore. He barely said anything, right? God, and what Logan Paul's trying to do is accuse CoffeeZilla of doing stuff illegal to invalidate his arguments. This is the most pathetic shit I've seen, right? It's like, regardless if something's illegal or not, there's really moral guidelines behind some of these things, and Logan Paul has violated many where I think CoffeeZilla has gone through the proper vetting process and proper experience, and gone through a lot of texts and information to vet whether he has an opinion on this situation or not. Now, regardless if one person lied or not, there's overwhelming evidence against Logan Paul. If you use your brain and think through some of the stuff that Logan Paul said, he hasn't brought up strong evidence to combat some of the issues CoffeeZilla has brought up. He only combated half the issues with half the context that CoffeeZilla had in the grand scheme of the whole event of CryptoZoo.
substantiate any evidence, took multiple criminals' words as truth, and broke laws, you still publish the defamation. However, unlike you, the blockchain doesn't lie. So let's highlight some things that you did point out. Crypto King Jake stole $6 million. True or not, we had already removed him from the team when we realized he was a bad actor and his motives were purely financial. Conman Eddie, lead developer, stole $1.7 million. True or not, when we learned he was a bad actor as well, he was immediately removed from the team. While myself and Jeff sold nothing and made nothing as verified through investigation and the blockchain.
Jeff, Logan's manager, to my knowledge, never sold. Neither did Logan Paul.
I repeat, Jeff and I made no money and will never make any money on CryptoZoo. In fact, we only lost money trying to pick up the pieces. As has been the case with dozens of crypto and NFT projects, the space is unfortunately ripe for bad actors to infiltrate projects that start with even the best intentions. Jake the Snake is no longer affiliated with crypto.
Now, if you look through this, what Logan Paul does and says, right? He says, okay, these people were bad faith actors. CoffeeZilla said that, right? We know he said that. He knows that, you got no money from this. You also accuse him of defamation. Now, what part of this is defamatory? He has gone through information and formed an opinion, right? Now, defamation is attacking someone's character, currently what you're doing now, and saying they're a bad person without any valid evidence or facts. whereas CoffeeZilla had a strong basis of evidence against you and the whole team of bad faith actors. You can't say you're not a bad faith actor when you can't even deliver a project promised on and then lie to your audience about 3 times and saying you're working on something, yet you still haven't completed it. I just see that as a complete lie.
Zoo, and we hope the money he reappropriated was worth ruining his reputation. Con man Eddie is being investigated by a higher authority that I cannot speak on. As you can imagine, I was not cleared from legal to discuss much of this, including the legal process being undertaken and the criminal investigations going on during the fallout, but I do appreciate you calling out that rats under my nose stole the game code, millions of dollars, and left Jeff and I abandoned with no team and knives in our back. But even after 12 months of work, you've still managed to overlook one crucial piece of information. See, even though I've said it's coming so many times, you've assumed that CryptoZoo isn't being made. Who are you to decide when the development timeline ends?
Logan fucking made a promise of the development timeline, and it's obvious it does not take this long to make it work. Half of the shit was barely functional, but I'm pretty sure with the amount of resources he has, he can make it work within a lot shorter a period of time. 12 months? No. You could have probably done it with like 2-3 months with proper people and the fucking proper vetting process. He went off to do a lot of different things that weren't CryptoZoo. So he didn't even try and fix the shit that stank. What was he doing in the meantime? Like, he could have fixed it by now. Now you're making the assertion that it takes longer than this, right? Logan left the investors in the dark, they left the people in the dark, and he never responded. He hasn't fixed the issue, and what he's probably going to do is after this, he's probably going to develop CryptoZoo and say, oh look, I developed this over this 12-month period of time whilst doing it over 1 or 2 months, which should have been done initially. That's probably what's going to happen, though this is just speculative, but from basic logic, you can ascertain that it does not take this long to fix a buggy CryptoZoo thing, which half of the code has already been put out online, which is nothing special. If anything, I don't even doubt that if he had a proper team and employed proper people, he could get it done within 10 to like 20 days of fixing bugs and a huge amount of crunch time. And he's like, oh yeah, but I'm still working on it. Why did you release it in the buggy mess that it was? And why did you ascertain that we're still working on CryptoZoo after we took it down? Prior you said, oh, hatching works. Why'd you have to take the whole thing down in the first place? This is a contradiction. You shouldn't, if it was just fine, you shouldn't have taken it down.
I got everything stolen from me and our community, stopped promoting publicly as soon as I knew the extent of the internal issues, took all of the heat on social, and you still published a defamatory hit piece fully knowing I was innocent just so you could enrich yourself in your $10 million studio. Sharp, but deeply unethical, dangerously misleading, and illegal. I suggest you use the money you got from pumping your Patreon to hire a good lawyer. You're gonna need it. And maybe we could have talked about this if you had reached out to me, personally. Not my manager, Jeff, who is not me, Steven, but the first time you did was on Christmas Eve after you released your series so you could rely on false statements and unreliable people used recklessly. The subject line was third request for comment. Yeah, not quite. This will be my 3rd time reaching out to you and your team. The first 2 times were through your manager, Jeff. The first 2 times were through your manager, Jeff. Okay, so the last time on Christmas Eve after the fact was to me. You have a funny way of twisting things. And I also noticed you left out that part on Twitter. Why hide that? Trust me, CryptoZoo is coming. I will make damn sure of it. And honestly, it sucks that after years of personal reform, going through trials and tribulations and busting my ass to evolve into a person that I can say I'm actually proud of, you led the charge to drive and monetize a narrative.
Logan Paul then complains about Steven going through his manager, which is the normal vetting process. Usually you go through someone's manager to get to that person. You're using that as an excuse to justify your actions on why you didn't contact. And I'm pretty sure CoffeeZilla I'm pretty sure he did this, right? I'm pretty sure he contacted Logan Paul directly for this. And he also contacted Logan Paul to get on his podcast. And Logan Paul said, oh, would you like to come on my podcast on my home turf? And making Logan, like himself, seem like the hero. Now, in a lot of these circumstances, the only way you can interpret it is Logan Paul is only showing half truths here. He's not giving the full context and full width, whilst insulting the opposing arguments, whilst not giving the full clarity of information that's needed for a full understanding of what happened in CryptoZoo. Logan Paul has dug such a hole about voiding accountability in this whole scenario and this whole argument that it's actually really aggravating for me to watch. The only thing he does is say, well, it's everyone else's fault, not mine, because I have no control over it.
Telling millions of people that I'm a fraud or I tried to scam my audience. That is patently false. This video is mainly for my fans and anyone who's on the fence that I hope I can help understand a situation that is tremendously complex but has been oversimplified for both views and clicks. And lastly, CoffeeZilla. I now know your motives with this. Clout and money, good for you, but also you're slimy as f. So I'm not gonna come on any of your podcasts. If you wanna come on Impulsive and talk about this, that's fine. You've denied my invitation multiple times. You're still invited. It can be a one-on-one. If not, we're gonna handle this ourselves while we continue to build CryptoZoo, and I'll see you in court.
Now, Logan Paul knew the release wasn't going to plan, and he constantly lied about this release, etc. Now, we don't know if he's had anything of personal gain or personal benefit from this, but there might be. We just don't know. There's many avenues in the world that you can gain to benefit from this, but one thing he did benefit from was Dink Doink Coin and shit like that. He lied about that too, and it's the most obvious lie in the world. And it's same with CryptoZoo. He lied everywhere, right? And it's obvious he is a bad faith actor. I just don't know what he has to gain out of this scenario. Would I call him a fraud in this scenario? Probably. But beyond this, I don't know if there is anything else, and nor do I have the evidence. It would just be purely speculation. Now, if I were to speculate and say those speculations were fact, then that would be defamation. But what CoffeeZilla did was investigate and bring together evidence and show proof that things weren't the way you said them, which is not defamation. That's just you lying. I also think it's bad to say that everyone else was wrong and I did nothing wrong in this whole scenario. That's also a big problem. The funny thing is, you bring up someone's criminal past, yet you're the one who does have a past of doing really dumb shit, really bad stuff, right? Stuff that you're not supposed to do and you're informed you're not supposed to do, like getting in prison because you went and filmed with a drone over Athens or filmed that body in Japan. You say you've evolved, but yet you go back to this kind of stuff. And it's not once that you've done this, you also created Dink Doink Coin, which there's strong evidence to prove that you are the one who actually made that coin. So what I'm saying is there's a tiny bit of issues here. Now, it's a bit much to insult your detractors when there's a high level of evidence brought against you. Now, I'm also going to say this. I'm no way the most experienced in breaking down arguments or general speech. If you bring up the 3-part series and Logan Paul's video, you will know that Logan Paul does not address 90% of the issues that were brought up within that video. Now, the biggest issue is that he insults his opponents, which usually means you do not have a strong argument and you have to invalidate their character to make it so your argument's somewhat valid. To me, this is one way you can tell people are lying. He does use proof and facts, but he doesn't really bring up strong enough evidence or proof comparative to what CoffeeZilla did. Since his information was so much worse than CoffeeZilla, he has to insult the people that he was with rather than vetting actual good information about what CoffeeZilla said. He does bring up some okay points at best, if you're to say that CoffeeZilla didn't bring him up in the most favorable light, but that's about all you can do. Now, again, in no way am I good at doing this, nor do I think I'm professional or anything along those lines. You can take what you will from this video, and there are definitely things that probably could be improved about what I said or how I went through this process of going through his video. But do I think Logan Paul's a good person? From what I've seen, no. But you'll have to make up your own mind on that.